with five limousine type of vehicles on the roads. Well, we should teach management with all our programs. We have to manage our resources within our means. There's no way out that you give out fuel and allow all the entire neighboring countries as Father Christmas. I don't have any regret whatsoever removing the subsidy. It is necessary. We cannot spend our future generations' investment upfront.
But do you think it should have been phased, done in bits?
It is part of the fear that is unnecessary. Phased, no matter how you cut it or you slice it in segments, you still have to meet the bills. So, cut your coat strictly to your size. It's what we must manage. Management is the issue. And we have no choice but to pull the handbrake. Otherwise, we are headed for slippery slopes.
And said and more. Joining us live in the studio, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo is here, legal practitioner, former spokesperson of the Labour Party, and columnist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, viewers, for joining in.
And joining us via Zoom is Mr. Jesutega Onokposa, a lawyer and APC Chieftain. Thank you so much for being with us on the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start off with Mr. Okonkwo. Let's talk a bit about this presidential broadcast, this media chat. It's the first time he's done it since he came into office. Some people have said there's kudos for that. At least at gathering the media to get our very own Malkwe Ogun Yusuf was there. You saw her asking him that question about the removal of fuel subsidy. Should it have been tapered, she said. And he said, why? Why should it have been tapered? And then she said, well, maybe some kind of contingency plan. And he said, what contingency? What are your thoughts on that particular conversation?
Well, it's very regrettable that first and foremost in a democracy, which requires transparency and accountability to the people, a president is having the first presidential chat 19 months after taking over power. That's about 40% of his presidency. 19 months is about 40% of the 4-year term of a president. We have to stop all this nonsensical giving kudos to failures. For 19 months, you've not been able to tell Nigerian people what you have been doing. And you started doing wrong things from the day you were sworn in.
But he has been speaking. He has done briefings. He has been giving speeches. He's been explaining himself since he came into office.
Democracy is not about your talking to the people. It's about your being interrogated by the people. The Constitution says the participation of the people in their government shall be ensured. The people participate through their representatives, both from the media, both from any policy you want to do, has to be interrogated by the people. Democracy is not just about doing what is good for the people, it is also about doing what the people want. Now, let's come to the nitty-gritty of the presidential media chart. There were about 4 major branches of what he said. Talked about the stampede, talked about cost of governance, talked about corruption, talked about the tax reform bill. These are about the major areas. About the stampede, this president shifted all the responsibility to the organizers, people who wanted to help people who are hungry. Let me tell you, this stampede happened in the East. It happened in the West. It happened in the north. That means it's now a general thing that Nigerians from all sectors are hungry and things are hard. They did not die in stampede because they were poor. Poverty exists in every country. They died in a stampede because they were desperately hungry. In other words, they know that if they don't have that food, they don't even have anything to fall back in their house. And that is why they had to struggle for 5,000 naira and for grains of rice. The worth of life in Tinubu's government is now about 5,000 naira, and it's about grains of rice. Look at what happened in Abuja, in the Catholic ministry. They've been doing that for decades. They've been doing that for years. Why is today's own different? It is different because people have become desperately hungry. When people say negligence of the people organizing it, people that were expecting like 500 persons and they saw 5,000 persons, they wouldn't have reasonably assumed that 5,000 persons will come. And when the 5,000 persons came, they would have been able to organize themselves if they were not desperate. But because they were desperate, they did not wish to ever live there without having anything. Having seen that more people came, they knew that some people would live there without anything. So they had to now struggle to make sure that they are part of the beneficiaries. That is a sign of a failed state, struggling and dying for the most basic necessity of life, food. When the president visited Lagos the first time, his own people started it. We are hungry, sir. And he said things are well. His dim-wit fellow people that are serving him will go to him and say things are well. And when he neglected those signs, by August, the whole nation, they were protesting for hunger and hardship. They neglected it. In December, people are now dying of stampede for food for 5,000 naira. Now, and he said, it is the fault of the organizers, fault of the people that want to help. You are incompetent government that cannot cater for the security and welfare of its people. Now again, let's move into the issue of cost of governance.
We'll get to the cost of governance, but I want to get Mr. Onokposa to respond to that. Mr. Onokposa, well, Mr. Kenneth has said he's finding some issue with the president's views on the stampede. Where do you stand?
Well, the stampede is most unfortunate. May the lives that were lost, may their souls rest in peace. I think the real problem is that we have just failed woefully in producing food for our citizens. You know, when we are campaigning for this administration, the people were calling us Agbadorians, you know, because our president was always talking about producing food. Unfortunately, we don't seem to be able to produce the food, you know, and you just have to accept that's our fault, you know. The good thing about agriculture is that you can plant a crop today and harvest in 3 months, in 6 months, in 1 year, you know, and try to convince our president just to concentrate on food production. Even if we cannot reduce the price of fuel or whatever else, let our people have food to eat. Let our citizens have food to eat. You know, Kenneth is trying to be overly political about the matter. That's just who my dear brother Kenneth Okonkwo is. May their souls rest in peace. and it's a shame that we have allowed prices to skyrocket, especially of food, of food. Let people just have food to eat. That's my take on it.
I mean, that's a very interesting dynamic. I mean, an admission, because you are a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, that is an admission of failure, and one that I think you're standing by.
No.
Because what you said in the beginning of this conversation was, we have failed. What did I hear it wrongly? He said, we have failed to provide food for our people, and that is just it. That was what you said. So are you admitting that as a party in governance, when it comes to food production for the Nigerian people, has the party failed?
Yes. No. Because we did not concentrate on food, on providing food for our citizens. Because we did not.
I mean, I'm still hearing the same thing from you, Mr. Okonkwo. We'll get back to you, Mr. Onokposa, on that, but that does sound like an admission of failure.
Well, I so much enjoy my brother Onokposa because he seems reasonably, honest. I used the word failure, I think, about once, and he used the word failure about 5 times. So, and yet he said I'm political. And actually, he re-echoed, more than myself. But having said that, God forbid that I will play politics with the destiny of Nigeria.
Because that is what the All Progressive Congress accused opposition. Actually, it was the PDP that they were responding to.
Yes,
and they said you're playing politics with this.
Yes, that is the cheap blackmail that failures always do. Rather than addressing the issue, they shift the responsibility. Have you ever seen this government? When they say they take responsibility, I wonder which responsibility. The worst statement the president made in the presidential chart is scoring himself excellent. He said he has done excellent job. The man that is staying with me in this studio is an Agbadorian. And he said we have failed. Was that not an admission that this president has done the worst job by any president since independence? And I always place my facts on the table. What are the facts on the table? This president, in the last 12 months, we have had national grid collapse for more than 12 times. It has never happened in Nigerian history, meaning the power is not accessible, it is not available, it is not affordable. This president, between October and November, and this is a president that is priding itself or himself that security has improved. More than 2,496 people have been murdered and about 1,757 persons kidnapped between October and November. This is a president in that presidential chart said we should cut our cloth, according to him, according to his body. But thank God you have said good. Now, this is the president that is driving the most expensive car in the history of presidents of Nigeria, limousine beast, that cost Nigeria almost ₦1 billion. This is the president that had a presidential jet working, but he went for a new one, ₦150 billion. And this is the president that is saying, cut your cloth according to your size. So in the area of what has he excelled to award himself excellent?
Let's find out what Mr. Onokposa thinks. Mr. Onokposa, was the president right to score himself excellent?
Well, no, I must admit that, because I must just admit that it was not right, because we ought to be able to feed our citizens, and it's very, very easy to do that. You just you simply just get the people to go to farm. You mobilize them to go to the farm and produce food, And unfortunately, we've not been able to do that, and that is even us in our party. We feel a bit bad about what that our president has not been able to mobilize Nigerians to produce food for our citizens.
You do seem very. I'm listening to you right there. You do seem very saddened and like Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo said, reasonably honest in your assertions this morning. What would you think? What would be a score? What would be the score? Because what the president did yesterday was call himself excellent. What would be your score for his governance style this year, at least?
Well, I can't. I'm a Catholic, Kayla. I'm a Catholic, and we have not done well. That's the truth. Simple.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get back to you. An admission there from Mr. Onokposa. He's an APC chieftain saying we have not done well. Is that a step in the right direction? At least if someone from the party, from the All Progressives Congress, is saying, look, we haven't done well. Is that a step in the right direction at least? Maybe we're on the road to recovery, maybe. If the president has been listening to the Onokpasas of this world, he would have been performing better in office. But he's listening to people who are telling him he's excellent. And he will come to the whole world to be saying he's scoring himself excellent on the graves of about more than 70 persons that died on the eve of that score to himself because of food. What is the level of conscience that we need for a man to be compassionate for his people? Look, the facts are there. Facts are sacred. This same president, when he was told about corruption, how to fight corruption, he said, oh, I will fight corruption. We are fighting it. How? We increase the wages of the people. Oh, we are allowing people to go to school, education. Let me tell you, corruption since the fall of man in Garden of Eden is innate in human nature. And the only thing that can deter people from being corrupt is deterrence, punishment for corruption. This president has just revealed that he does not intend to punish anybody that is corrupt in his administration. The only thing that will make him to punish anybody is when you are no longer loyal. And it's happened with the humanitarian ministry. I was here when I told you it was optics. How many months now? Have those people been tried? You suspended, you removed. Has that person been tried? Now, when he talked about he is increasing the wages of people, when this president came in, the minimum wage in Nigeria was $60 per a person. Today is about $46 per person, less than $2 a day. And then you're talking about you're fighting corruption by increasing minimum wage, when actually the value of the minimum wage has reduced. That means he is actually increasing the propensity for corruption. Because you talk about currency, not in the quantity of it, but in the quality of it. $1 has remained $1 since I was born. The value of it changing maybe about 6% or 10%. More than 56 years of my existence on earth. In 1984, we could pride ourselves that $1 was equal to 1 naira. Today, 1,900, it reached that point, was equal to $1. So we have failed about 1,900% times since that time. And there is a president sitting down telling you he's excellent. Now, let me tell you about the subsidy that he talked about. Petrol price is not 1,000 naira because of removal of subsidy. When subsidy was removed, the price came to about 517 naira per liter. What caused
Naira, what caused the per liter fuel to reach 1,000 something is the devaluation of the currency. Now, economically, any president that is sound economically, you do not devalue your currency when you are a net importer of resources. When he devalued that currency, Nigeria was importing 100% of refined products. What it meant was that you have made your importation more costly than your exportation. And then even the government could not afford that price. That was why they had to introduce some kind of subsidy again. They removed it completely. But because of the devaluation of Naira by more than 300%, from about 500 Naira to 1,700, and it jacked up the price of fuel to about 1,000, more than 1,000. So the issue here is that there is a government that is lacking in knowledge, in economics, in emotional intelligence, and in reality. They are living in alternate universe. The problem with this government is that they are bold to take decisions, but they want to extort all the sacrifice from the people. So when they made the mistake of the devaluation, they allowed the whole impact of their mistake to fall on the people.
I want to be able to...
People are paying through their nose for the incompetence and corruption of this regime.
I want to be able to get what the president said. Let's listen to him when he talked about palliatives. Let's listen to what the president had to say about that.
It is very sad that people are not well organized. We just have to be more disciplined in our society. Okay. Condolences to those who lost the family members. But it is good to give. Every society, even in America, they have food banks. They have hungry people. In Britain, they have food bank. They have warehouses. They are organized. They take tokens to be in line and take turns to collect. It's unfortunate. We just have to. It's a reflection in our bus stops where we don't even want to be on queue before we rush into the vehicle. It is very sad, but we continue to learn from our mistakes. To me, I see this as a very grave error on the part of the organizers. But things are improving. It doesn't kill our happiness for this season. It should be. We should just get on with it.
I mean, those were the words that really got you upset in the beginning of our conversation. And I think in many ways, those words from the president have affected Mr. Onokposa in a way where he couldn't do. The Mr. Onokposa that we know would have been a strong defender, and he's admitting, saying, no, this was not good. He didn't like it very much. At the time, you also mentioned, the president's stand on the cabinet reduction.
Oh, yes.
Because that was one of the conversations that was had. I think it was Mr. Babajide Titoju who asked him yesterday, how are you going to reduce cost of governance? This cabinet is one of the biggest. I know you've done some reductions before. Are you going to reduce it a little bit more? And he said no.
First of all, he never did any reduction. He had 48 ministers coming in. When he removed 5, he replaced it with 7. So the issue here is that, like I told you, there is a president that is living in alternate universe. He said we must learn to live within our means. We should not be spending more than we are producing. How can a government in a capitalist economy think about bloating cabinet as as the explanation for efficiency.
Well, he says they're performing optimally. Those were his words. They're performing optimally. Everyone there.
Good. That is where I hold the journalists that interrogated him very responsible. Because when he said that, he even dared them to give him an example of one minister that is not performing. And I just told you about a minister. We've had 12 national grid collapse. In 12 months, it has never happened. If that is performance, then it is regrettable. Now, the issue about cost of governance. In a capitalist nation, a minister's role is more of regulatory because he doesn't go there to do it. There is private ownership to means of production. What are you doing with 3 ministers in agriculture alone? And people are dying because of food. You have just bloated the bureaucracy, spending money on people that are doing nothing. What are you doing with about 16 ministers of state? That is assistant to minister. And you're giving them the largesse.
They won't agree with you.
Of a minister. I am saying it.
They won't agree with you.
Because minister of state means that there is a substantive minister.
Respond when you're giving your response. He talked about the tax reforms. And in fact, we're seeing that as one of the major stories. And most every newspaper today, he's not going back on those tax reforms. And then he also talked about the service chiefs and security in the country. Just your views on some of the assertions that he made, especially when it comes to the tax reforms. He's not going back. People say these tax reforms are pro-people.
First of all, I listened to the last speaker. And one thing about people who want to parrot the achievements of this government is that they do not speak with facts and quantitative analysis. What figure did he state whatsoever to support any of his analysis? The inflation rate, what is it? Food inflation, more than 40%. I bought the bag of rice that I used, 109,000 naira. Now, he talked about Buhari's government. The truth is that Tinubu's government has beatified Buhari's government. He inherited 195 naira per liter in terms of fuel. The inflation rate that he inherited, he has doubled it like 100%. So he inherited exchange rate for about 420 naira per dollar from Buhari. Our debts, then we were indebted to about 77 trillion. Now it's about 130-something trillion. This is the president that said, if I remove all subsidy, I will have enough revenue to provide the infrastructure. And this is a president that has removed all the subsidy and is borrowing. He has borrowed more than $15 billion since he came in. Maybe more than Buhari borrowed throughout his 8 years. So when people who speak, the last speaker just came in and just said what President Tinubu said in his presidential chat and gave him a pass mark. In law, when you want to corroborate an evidence, your own evidence will be independent of what is said. Not repeating exactly the same thing the person said, and now say the president scored himself excellent, so he should be excellent. That's by the way. When we talk about the tax reforms, Section 146 or thereabout of the tax bill said they were going to increase VAT from 5% to 15%. And yet he said the tax bill is pro-poor. The president said
that. That's because particular segments of society are exempted. Yes. Particular people.
From what? From consumption?
From payment.
You go to the supermarket to buy and you're exempted.
So you're still paying it if you're going to
That's what I'm saying. That's consumption tax. The tax you pay for buying things. Do you see somebody and say, oh no, your face looks poor. Please, this VAT is not part of
Show me your pay slip.
Good.
So that I can exempt.
And he said it's proper. This is a tax that is 800,000 per annum that they said you are exempted from paying tax. The minimum wage is 70,000 a month. That comes to 840,000 per annum. So nobody is exempted at all from that if it is left like that. And he said it's proper. What is proper? Let me tell you, I support the tax reform bill, not because it is proper. But because it is going to harmonize our tax administration system, so that somebody will not wake up and more than 130 something different agencies, both legal and illegal, will be harassing you along the road. Bring the tax receipt of this, bring the tax receipt. So they are trying to harmonize the tax administration system, whereby maybe only one agency will be collecting all the tax. And then you will now pay your tax, whether it's corporate, personal, this and that. It will make it easy for you to pay. The tax bill, any tax bill that increases the tax of Nigerians by 1 naira is a bad law.
Mr. Ryan, but just your closing words, Mr. Okonkwo.
Well, my closing words is that this government, this president should listen to the people on the street and stop listening to people that are telling him he's doing an excellent job. He has done the worst job for any president.
Look, he said these are birthing pains, Mr. Okonkwo. He said we need time.
Yes.
When this baby is born, we will rejoice.
Yes, I've always said it, that when your wife is in labor, no matter how hard the labor is, and eventually gives birth to a monster, you will still not rejoice, even though she has given birth. It's only when she gives birth to a bouncing baby child that you rejoice. If you give birth to a child and it is stillborn, the child is dead, do you rejoice? Anytime this president goes to celebrate on Christmas, a lot of people die. Last year, more than 200 persons died in December when he went to visit on holidays. This year, 70-something persons died. Do you celebrate when people are dying? This year's own is of hunger. No, if this president going on holidays brings about these deaths, let him remain in Abuja. Let's know where our problem is coming from.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up there.
Celebrate?
Well, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo.